Hey guys, I'm Paul. I'm a front-end web developer, and today I want to talk about web dev trends. Trends to embrace and ones that are here to stay in year 2024. So let's get started. We all know that web dev is a fast-paced industry, and choosing to sleep instead of learning new technologies can cost us opportunities. And so in this talk, we're going to learn all these cool new technologies that can help us build better web applications as well as future-proof our skills. So the innovations mainly revolve around improving the performance of the websites or web apps that we build and the experience when we build them. So with the tools that allows us to deliver almost 0 kilobytes of JavaScript to the browser, because we all know that the more JavaScript we ship to the browser, the slower our websites will be. And aside from that, we also have tools that allows us to develop our websites faster, as you can see here, by just using Vite instead of Webpack, which is the existing solution for over the past years. But Vite is just faster when building our application and loading them on the browser. Thanks for Anton Kalmanovich for doing the benchmark. Aside from that, I think it's worth to mention how easy it is nowadays to build a full stack application with the tools that almost blurs the line between the client and the server. So code sharing between them is much simpler now, less things to maintain, and yeah, it's pretty exciting what these new innovations on the next upcoming years. So, and also good thing is web dev space nowadays is really welcoming to the beginners. When you're a beginner or a newbie, learning web development is much simpler nowadays. But some might say that there's more things to learn and everything's getting more complex. I could argue about that. Let's take Svelte for example. Svelte is a new UI framework for building our web apps. And as you can see here, it's just use the basics of HTML and JavaScript that we learn. And from there, you can build a full-fledged web applications. And also, there's these new AI technologies that can help us when learning the basics or the concept of the things around web development. You just literally ask questions and it can give you an answer. It's like how would you search things on Google. But I think ChatGPT is better if you want to have like quick access to the information. If you want to feel that you're having a conversation with a human. But the AI model is it's still trying to learn, and so the answers that you'll get may not be correct all the time. I think those innovations is really beneficial for beginners, so newbies are happy. With that said, let's talk about the trends on web development. So I want to focus first on building a static website. So I'm talking about blogs, portfolios, landing pages, documentations. So we can say these sites are content heavy and we want these types of websites to be fast, so we don't get our users mad for waiting too much for our sites to be loaded. But the question is, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is enough, right, to develop these types of websites? Well, yes, if the project is simple, if the websites that you'll be developing is simple, but if the project starts to grow and starts adding more feature, you may find yourself wanting to reuse some parts of your code to other places, but you have no way to do that when you just use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript alone. The vanilla stack. So you will have code duplication problems. You may also want to have some data fetching, right? So now you now have to handle updating the DOM manually, and you may also handle some states. Things can get really complicated very quick. You start adding more pages, which, can get out of hand quickly if you have like hundreds of pages. So yeah, and you may also want to integrate other tools. That's hard if you don't have any frameworks to help you. So insert Astro. Astro is a framework that allows you to write components. Components are just a way to contain your HTML elements or your markup plus the logic or JavaScript. contain them into a one reusable piece of code that you can then reuse throughout your entire website. So what's more cool about Astro is that it lets you choose your favorite UI frameworks from the most popular framework, which is React. And we also have Angular, Vue.js, and also like newer frameworks, Svelte and Solid. They are supported by Astro. So what Astro does is it compiles and builds your component, and then the HTML will then be generated on the server, right? The static HTML pages, which then can be served through CDN. It makes your sites load faster when the user is trying to access your website. And this whole process is called static site generation, because you generate static site on the server, right? But static websites aren't enough, right? Like the most useful websites that I know have some kind of interactivity into it. So we still need JavaScript to handle interactions. The process of sending JavaScript to the static HTML pages to allow interactivity is called hydration, and Astro makes it easier by its client directives. So first in the list, we have this client load. What it does is it only sends JavaScript to the page right the moment it loads. And after the load page, then JavaScript will be sent to the client, allowing interactivity for our navbar component. Next up is client visible directives, which, as the name implies, the JavaScript will be only sent the moment that this component or this element is visible to the user screen. Next is the client only directive, which means this component will be rendered only on the client, so it skips pre-generating HTML on the server. It's supposed to have server in there, but yeah. There are more Astro client directives. I just list this because I think these are the most useful ones. I might be wrong, but yeah, you can just check out it on Astro's documentation. One cool feature about Astro is its cloud-based navigation. So creating new pages in Astro is as easy as creating a new file on the source pages directory. And now if we try to access the website /about, we will see our newly created page. Now, routing is also simple. Just declare an HTML element and just supply the right value to the href attribute. And also another cool feature of Astro is that it makes data fetching easier with the globally accessible fetch and top level await that allows you to just await your fetch request on the top of your file, right? And just access it directly inside of your component. So this makes data fetching much easier. And what's cool about this is since Astro is a server first framework, the data will be fetched on server first before it sends to the client, right? Unlike client-side rendering, or if you try to use the Astro's client-only directive, what Astro does is that it will make your component be rendered on the client. So you wouldn't have the data unless the browser has finished executing the JavaScript for your component. But if you don't like Astro, or if you have some specific use cases, there are Astro alternatives out there, such as 11t. If you have thousands of pages to pre-generate, 11t will generate those pages very quickly compared to Astro. And we also have the Hugo. If you have thousands of pages to pre-generate, but also hate JavaScript, since Hugo is written in Golang. That's just about the trends when building static websites. Let's now talk about the trends when building an interactive web app. So these are the types of websites that have more interactions into it. Web apps such as social media platforms, collaboration tools, e-learning platforms, and even web-based games. So these kind of websites are, we can say, they are interaction heavy. We also need them to be fast, so our users don't get frustrated when they notice that our page isn't responding very fast on their interactions or on their inputs. So with this type of websites, JavaScript needs to take over everything to allow like the full interactivity in the web apps. And so JavaScript needs to handle routing, DOM updates, and stuff. So we've been using this existing SPA frameworks as a solution for that, right? We have React, Angular, and Vue, but we also carry this burden on us, like the bad performance and bad SEO. SEO is just the metrics that Google use to see how it will rank your websites. So basically speaking, the higher your website's SEO is, the more easy it is to be found by the users. The lower it is, the harder it is to be found by your users. So the root cause of these issues is by letting JavaScript to take everything. If you have this big JavaScript bundle ship on the client, your web app performance will be worse. In SPA frameworks, you only have like a blank HTML, and JavaScript basically takes over everything on like completing the content of that blank HTML. The SEO will suffer because of that. By the way, like anything above 300 to 350 kilobytes of JavaScript bundle, consider as big bundle, and like that's where you need to like do split or compress your JavaScript bundle. And if you try to ignore those issues, your users, especially the ones that have lower end mobile devices, will suffer. And also users that have poor network connectivity will also suffer from those issues. So yeah, clearly these SPA frameworks or these existing solutions aren't enough. So insert meta frameworks. Meta frameworks such as NextJS. By the way, meta frameworks are superset frameworks of, let's say, React. Its a corresponding meta framework is NextJS, and I will continue discussing the other meta frameworks later on. So meta frameworks provide basically all the features that most apps or sites need, like the routing, data fetching, and pre-generating HTML on the server. So Next.js is a meta framework of React, and by using Next.js, you also have access to React's newest feature, the React Server Components and React Concurrent Rendering. These features aren't available directly in React. Like you can only use them if you use Next.js. And because those features are so powerful that it requires new generation of bundler and new generation of router. So Next.js provide those, and that's why it's great choice if you want to have those features. But what are those features, and how are they beneficial for us when developing our web apps? So let's start first with server components. So imagine in your React component, you can just wait your fetch request directly in the component. Normally in React, we can't do that. So now we have to wrap our component, and we have to turn it into a sync. We have to use the sync to be able to use the await keyword, right? So that allows us to directly access the data that we are trying to request. So data fetching becomes simpler. We don't have to use effect. That's what we normally use when we're trying to fetch data, and also other data fetching libraries out there such as React Query. We don't have to use them anymore, but we still can use React Query. But by just doing this, like we eliminate the using those approach. So this one's much more simpler. And what's more cool about this is that this component will be run or will be rendered on the server, and what gets sent down to the client is not some blank HTML, but an actual elements. You can see the main element here, right, with the fetch data that eliminates the need to send JavaScript for this component. So we don't need to send JavaScript down to the client for this component. So our website becomes faster. But now a lot of developers start to ask questions such as, now I have to convert all my existing components to server components, and also now I have to rent a server to be able to run server components. No, like the existing React components that we wrote, it's just there. You just have an option to use this if you think that server components and the features that it brings is beneficial for your projects or for your team. Yeah, that's just about server components. We also have the concurrent rendering. So concurrent rendering is a way to like tell React that a specific part of my application is not yet ready to be displayed. Right, so maybe I want to have something like a loading spinner or like loading indicator, who indicates that the component is still, not yet ready to be displayed. And again, you can't use this directly in React. You can only use this feature in NextJS, but the support of it, we will be able to use it directly in React on the next upcoming years. So yeah, NextJS makes it like really simple to like have loading state or to like declare loading indicator in our web applications. Because previously, if you've been developing web applications, you know how complex. It's not complex, but there's a lot of process or there's a lot of work to just express data loading in our applications. So NextJS makes it easier, and it's as easy as creating a loading.js file on the page that we want it to, we want our loader be displayed. In this example, I'm using TypeScript, so it's loading.tsx. Now loading is tied on the individual post. If we try to click one post here, we'll see this loading indicator first, and then the actual data. Look how easy that is, right? Yeah, that's just about React's new features and generally about Next.js. If you're not a React fan and you want to use like other UI frameworks, meta frameworks such as Angular, it has analog meta framework, or if you're using Vue, you can use Nux, or if you're using like the new UI frameworks such as Svelte, it has SvelteKit, or for Solid, it has Solid Start. But if you realize that performance in SEO doesn't really matter on the type of project that you're building, then you're probably good to go with this SPA frameworks. But I want to also talk about the trend that's been happening when starting a React, since the most popular one. So there's this trend, or yeah, it's because React's officially said goodbye to Create React App, or CRA, and Webpack. The React team doesn't recommend them anymore, and they recommend Vite instead. React plus Vite is getting more popular than CRA, and there's a lot of reason into it. But yeah, sorry, I had to drop the meme. Yeah, the reasons are mainly about performance and flexibility and extensibility of Vite, right? Vite is just faster than Webpack in terms of build time and in terms of like browser loading or JavaScript bundles. And a it's also flexible as it is a framework agnostic. Actually, Vite originally starts in Vue.js. It's just so flexible that it starts supporting other frameworks such as React later on as it improves. So yeah, it's also plugin based. You have a lot of plugins to choose from to use in your React. No, not React, but to in your application. But yeah, that's a new way to start a React project. And next trend that I want to talk about is uh, we started to realize that virtual DOM is isn't really a great solution for reactivity. There's this new components that's saying and virtual DOM is pure overhead. I have a better approach to handle reactivity or the way that we handle updating something when our state changes, right? So specifically, we want to update our UI elements whenever our data or the state has changed. So Svelte and SolidJS offers a clever way on doing that. So let's start with Svelte first. Svelte doesn't use, so unlike React, it doesn't use virtual DOM. It uses compiler instead. The reactivity is built into the compiler. So it's really simple. We're gonna see an example later on. And so the compiler will compile your Svelte code into a JavaScript that the browser can execute. Right? So what's more cool about it is that the compiled JS, since it's using a compiler, the JavaScript that will be sent to the client is your application only, unlike React, where it also ships the framework itself. It's the one that handles everything, like the rendering of your UIs to the client's browser or devices. So this is an example of a simple counter implemented on Svelte. So as you can see, declaring a reactive state is just simple as declaring a variable, and changing it is as simple as setting a new value onto it. So that it automatically updates the UI that reference the reactive states. So yeah, Svelte is really cool for its simplicity. Yeah, let's now take a look onto Solid's approach. So it's more similar to React, but it takes size and performance more seriously. It only weighs like about 8 kilobytes of JavaScript, and it also doesn't use virtual DOM, but only fine-grained reactivity. So what is fine-grained reactivity? Fine-grained reactivity is it allows SolidJS to know exactly which parts of the UI are which parts of the UI needs to be updated. It only updates the parts of the UI that really needs to be updated, but it doesn't use virtual DOM. The reactivity feature of SolidJS is not tied directly to the component. So you can see component in SolidJS is just a function. So it only runs once. So that's why you see here it only logs hello once, even though I'm changing the state, unlike React where it continuously re-renders the whole component whenever the state has changed. So yeah, SolidJS achieved that because it has a compiler and like a Svelte, and because of its reactivity primitives. So it produces a highly optimized JavaScript, and in return, it's really fast compared to other UI frameworks out there. Yeah, that's just about frameworks. Now let's talk about something that regardless of what framework it is. Do you know that developers starting to write less and less JavaScript code? What do they use instead? So they use something called TypeScript, which is just a JavaScript flavor. As you can see in the chart here, like most developers spend their time writing TypeScript than just vanilla JavaScript. So TypeScript solves a lot of problems that vanilla JavaScript, which is a dynamic type of language, introduced. So the problems that I'm talking about are these: the undefined or null errors. So if you've been developing web applications, you know these types of errors will be everywhere if you're not careful, especially when working on objects. So TypeScript is not specific to any frameworks. As long as you're writing JavaScript, you can also use TypeScript. So, but in this example, I just use React because I think this is like a practical use case that I could think of. So yeah, this is an example of Astro component, so that's why I can do a top level of it. But yeah, regardless, TypeScript is a way to statically define the types for your data. So in this case, I want to have the post object inside of this post array that's coming from requests. I want to declare types onto that. So as you can see, like silly errors like typos when we're trying to access a property on an object. So errors like this, TypeScript catches that early, like ahead of time before you even start your project. So unless you fix the error, you try to access the correct property, you're good to go. And also, so take a look. I'm trying to access a property that doesn't exist in an object. So TypeScript don't allow you to do that. Unless you fix the errors, and you're good to go. There's a lot of examples to show, but yeah, I'm not gonna show them all. But I still hope that you see TypeScript significance when writing complex web applications. So yeah, that comes to the last section of our talk, which is AI and how it helps developer to be more productive. Developers use Google a lot, but sometimes we have a very specific problem that it's very hard to find on the internet. And we get the really scary part, and that is going to the page 2 of Google. So yeah, I hope you never get into that situation. So yeah, but we have this AI tools like ChatGPT nowadays that can provide us the information that we need instantly, right? So it's just you just ask your questions and you get your answers, like this one. Like I've asked a lot of questions to ChatGPT to do this presentation. So yeah. And what's more cool about ChatGPT, especially the GPT-4, which is exclusive only to the Plus users who are paying for this feature. So this is a paid feature. But yeah, it's interesting that it can now run a code, right? It has now a code interpreter. Currently can only run Python, but who knows? Maybe on upcoming years, it can be able to run JavaScript, and we can be able to ask it to build our websites. So yeah, really exciting to see what it can do on the upcoming years. Oh, there's also this tools such as GitHub Copilot, which auto completes our code. So as you can see there, it knows what you're trying to write, so it auto completes it for you. But yeah, these IR tools are new, so they may not be accurate all the time. So, but they can still grow. Just give them years, and who knows what they can do. So that brings us to the conclusion of our talk. We now have more better tools and approaches to solve the problems on the performance and like the experience, like user or developer experience. So, and more things to learn, but there's just more small things to learn, but they're becoming more simpler. So, and also we realize that client can't handle everything, and server is still useful. That's why we're gonna kind of going back like from doing client side rendering where we do everything on the client. Now we're going back to the traditional server approach, but instead we're doing it in a way that it is hybrid, that we have control where we want to render our code. It's either on server or on the client. Like we have granular control to do things more appropriately. So that brings us to the conclusion that we still optimize things to be faster. We still strive to make things simpler. So the moment that stops the innovation, I think that's a dead end for us, the developers. So yeah, thanks for listening on this talk, and yeah, see you in the next time.